The day our lives changed forever was suffused with the scent of fresh-baked bread and the bittersweet remnants of loss. The familiar chime of the bell over the bakery door felt oddly out of place as Mark and I walked into the family lawyer's office. The room was small, cluttered with books and the lingering scent of musty paper, yet it exuded an air of solemnity that made me uneasy. "Lisa, Mark, please take a seat." Mr. Thompson, our lawyer, gestured towards the worn leather chairs in front of his desk. I glanced at Mark, who wore the same guarded expression I had seen countless times growing up. We were siblings, but in many ways, we couldn't have been more different. The lawyer cleared his throat, shuffling through a stack of papers. "Your father's will is clear. The bakery is to be equally divided between the two of you." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I had expected this, but hearing it aloud made it real. Equal. We all know who Dad trusted more with the business. Mark's voice cut through the silence, sharp and unyielding. "Mark, this isn't the time for that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Our father had always been a peacemaker, the glue that held us together. Without him, it felt like we were fraying at the edges. Mr. Thompson continued, oblivious to the tension. "You'll need to work together to keep the bakery running. It's what your father wanted." As we left the office, the weight of our new reality settled over us like a heavy fog. The bakery, with its quaint charm and the warm glow of its storefront, had always been my sanctuary, but now it felt like a battlefield. The next morning, I arrived early, the first light of dawn casting a golden hue over the familiar brick walls. The bakery smelled of flour and sugar, a comforting reminder of my father's presence. As I tied my apron, the door chimed, and Mark walked in, his usual confident stride tempered by the solemnity of our situation. "Morning," he said, his voice clipped. I nodded, busying myself with the dough in front of me. "We need to talk about the future of this place," he began, leaning against the counter. "What's there to talk about? We keep things as they are. Dad's recipes are what keep customers coming back," I replied, not looking up from my work. "Lisa, we need to modernize, expand the menu, update the decor. We can't survive on nostalgia alone," he argued, his frustration evident. "Dad's recipes are our legacy, Mark. You can't just change everything overnight." Sarah, our talented pastry chef, entered the kitchen, sensing the tension. "Maybe there's a way to blend both your ideas," she suggested, her voice gentle but firm. Sarah had always been the mediator, the calm in our storm. "We'll see," I muttered, not ready to concede. Mark and I had never seen eye to eye, and now, with the bakery's future at stake, our differences felt insurmountable. Days turned into weeks, and the strain of our new reality began to show. Every morning was a battle, every decision a point of contention. Mark pushed for innovation, suggesting new recipes and marketing strategies, while I clung to the traditions that had built our reputation. One evening, after closing, I found myself alone in the dimly lit kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I was exhausted, my hands sore from kneading dough, my heart heavy with worry. The door chimed, and Mark walked in, a stack of papers in his hand. "What's this?" I asked, not bothering to hide my irritation. "I've been talking to a business consultant. His name's David Miller. He thinks he can help us navigate this transition," Mark said, placing the papers on the counter. I glanced at the documents, feeling a pang of resentment. We don't need an outsider telling us how to run our business. "Lisa, we can't keep going like this. We're barely breaking even. We need help." Mark's voice was softer now, almost pleading. I sighed, the weight of responsibility pressing down on me. "Fine, but if this goes wrong, it's on you." Mark nodded, relief washing over his face. "Thank you." As we prepared for our first meeting with David, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The bakery was more than just a business to me. It was our home, our heritage. But as much as I hated to admit it, we needed to find a way to make it work, together. The day David walked into the bakery, his presence was like a gust of wind, unsettling and invigorating. He was charismatic, with a polished demeanor and a confident stride. "Good morning," he greeted us with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm David Miller. Let's see how we can turn this place around." I watched as he and Mark delved into discussions about marketing strategies and menu changes, my apprehension growing with every word. David's ideas were bold, but they felt like a betrayal of everything we had built. "David, we're proud of our traditions here. Our customers come for the recipes they've known for years," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And we can honor those traditions while also bringing in new customers with fresh ideas," David countered smoothly. "It's about finding the right balance." As the days passed, David's influence grew, and with it, the tension between Mark and me. Every decision felt like a battle, every compromise a loss. The bakery, once a place of warmth and comfort, was now a crucible of conflict. One late evening, as I stood in the quiet kitchen, the door chimed again. It was Mark, looking as weary as I felt. "We can't keep doing this, Lisa," he said, his voice heavy with fatigue. "We're tearing ourselves apart." I nodded, tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. "I know, but I don't know how to fix it. We need to trust each other," Mark said softly. "And maybe, just maybe, we need to trust David." As I looked at my brother, I saw not just the stubborn rival I had known all my life, but someone who was struggling just as much as I was. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, together, we could find a way to save our family legacy. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that David was hiding something. And as much as I wanted to believe in a brighter future, I knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. Little did we know, the real battle was just beginning. The bakery had always been my sanctuary, but lately it felt more like a battleground. Every morning, the scent of cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee did little to soothe the underlying tension that had settled between Mark and me. It was as if the very air we breathed was thick with unresolved arguments and unspoken resentments. I found solace in the rhythm of kneading dough, the familiar motions grounding me amidst the chaos. But even that simple pleasure was interrupted one morning when Mark burst into the kitchen, a stack of papers in hand, and a determined look in his eyes. "Lisa, we need to talk," he said, his voice firm but weary. I glanced up, wiping flour from my hands. "What now, Mark?" He spread the papers on the counter, revealing detailed plans for a menu overhaul. "These are David's ideas for new recipes and products. We need to start implementing some changes if we're going to survive." I felt a pang of irritation. "Mark, we've been over this. Our customers love the classics. We can't just abandon what works." Mark's eyes flashed with frustration. "I'm not saying we abandon anything. I'm saying we need to adapt. We can't keep running this place like it's the 1980s. Before I could respond, Sarah walked in, her cheerful demeanor a stark contrast to the tension between us. "Hey, what's going on?" "Just another debate about the future of the bakery," I said, my voice tinged with sarcasm. Sarah glanced between us, her smile fading. "Guys, we need to find a way to work together. This place means too much to both of you." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I know, Sarah, but it's not that simple." Days turned into weeks, and the strain of our differing visions began to show. Mark and I clashed over everything, from the layout of the display cases to the ingredients in our best-selling cakes. The bakery, once a place of harmony, was now divided by our conflicting ambitions. David's presence only seemed to amplify the tension. He was always there, with his polished smile and smooth words, offering solutions that often felt more like ultimatums. He had a knack for sowing discord, subtly pitting us against each other while presenting himself as the voice of reason. One evening, after a particularly heated argument, I found myself alone in the kitchen, the soft glow of the overhead lights casting long shadows on the walls. I was exhausted, my heart heavy with worry and doubt. The door chimed, and Mark walked in, looking just as worn out as I felt. He leaned against the counter, rubbing the back of his neck. "This isn't how I imagined things would be," he said quietly. I looked at him, seeing the boy who had been my constant companion and rival. Me neither, Mark. I miss Dad. Me too, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. But we have to find a way to make this work. For his sake. I nodded, feeling a tear slip down my cheek. I just don't know how. As the days passed, the bakery's struggles became more apparent. Sales were stagnant, and the strain was taking its toll on all of us. David's suggestions grew bolder, his influence more pervasive. He pushed for drastic changes, from rebranding to introducing new, untested products. One morning, I walked into the bakery to find Mark and David deep in conversation. They were discussing a complete renovation of the storefront, something that felt like a betrayal of everything our father had built. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "David thinks we should update the storefront, give it a more modern look," Mark said, avoiding my gaze. I felt a surge of anger. We can't afford that right now. And even if we could, it's not what Dad would have wanted. David stepped in, his tone patronizing. "Lisa, I understand your attachment to the past, but sometimes progress requires change. This could attract new customers, bring in more revenue." I glared at him, my patience wearing thin. "And what if it drives away the loyal customers we already have? Have you thought about that?" Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, let's take a step back and think this through. We need to do something, but it has to be the right move." The days continued to blur together, a relentless cycle of conflict and compromise. I found myself questioning every decision, every change. Was I holding on too tightly to the past? Or was Mark too eager to forge a new path? Late one evening, as I was closing up, I found Sarah in the kitchen, cleaning up after a long day. She looked up, offering a tired smile. "You okay?" I shrugged, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. "I don't know, Sarah. Everything feels like it's falling apart." She put down the dish she was washing and walked over, placing a comforting hand on my arm. "We'll get through this, Lisa. Somehow." As I looked into her eyes, I saw the unwavering loyalty and determination that had always been there. "Thank you, Sarah. I just hope we can find a way to make this work." As the tension continued to build, I couldn't shake the feeling that David was up to something. His smooth words and confident demeanor hid a deeper agenda, one that I was determined to uncover. Little did I know, the truth was closer than I could have imagined, and the real battle for our family's legacy was just beginning. The bakery was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator. It was late, and I was the last one here, trying to make sense of the mess we were in. The ledger lay open before me, numbers swimming on the page. I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion weighing heavily on me. A knock on the door broke the silence, and Sarah stepped in, her expression serious. "Lisa, there's something you need to see." She handed me a folder, her eyes filled with concern. I opened it, my heart pounding as I scanned the contents. Bank statements, invoices, and emails, all pointing to one undeniable truth. David had been siphoning money from the bakery. "This can't be real," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Why would he do this?" Sarah shook her head, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know, but we have to tell Mark." I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. How could I have been so blind? David had been playing us all along, manipulating our conflicts for his own gain. I grabbed the folder and marched out of the bakery, my mind racing. When I reached Mark's apartment, I pounded on the door until he opened it, bleary-eyed and confused. "Lisa, what's going on?" I shoved the folder into his hands. "David's been stealing from us, Mark. Look at this." Mark's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "How did we not see this?" "We were too busy fighting each other to notice," I said bitterly. "We have to stop him." The next morning, we confronted David in the bakery office. He looked up from his laptop, his smile faltering when he saw the fury in our eyes. "What's this about?" he asked, feigning innocence. "Don't play dumb, David," Mark said, his voice cold. "We know you've been stealing from us." David's expression hardened. "You don't understand." "Explain it to us then," I demanded, my hands trembling with rage. David leaned back in his chair, a calculating look in his eyes. Fine, yes. I've been taking money, but it was never about the money. It was about revenge. Revenge? Mark echoed, disbelief etched on his face. David stood, his posture menacing. I'm your half-brother. Our father left my mother and me out in the cold, while you two got everything. This bakery, this life, it should have been mine too. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. You're lying. David's laugh was cold and bitter. Am I? Ask your mother. Ask her about the affair. Mark and I exchanged a stunned glance. Our father had always been a pillar of strength and integrity. The idea that he had a secret family was unfathomable. David continued, his voice dripping with resentment. I spent my life watching you two live the dream that should have been mine. So, yes, I took from you. It was the only way I could get back what was stolen from me. I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, anger, pity, and a deep, gnawing sadness. You didn't have to do this, David. We could have found a way to make things right. David shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. It's too late for that now. Mark stepped forward, his voice steady. Maybe it isn't. We can still save the bakery. Together. David looked at us, the anger in his eyes softening for just a moment. Why would you help me after everything I've done? Because we're family, I said softly. And family means something, even if it's broken. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. We worked together, repairing the damage and putting the bakery back on track. It wasn't easy, and the road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of hope. One evening, as we were closing up, Mark turned to me, a rare smile on his face. We did it, Lisa. We actually did it. I nodded, tears of relief and gratitude filling my eyes. Yeah, we did. David had left town, unable to face the reality of what he had done. But in his absence, we found a way to rebuild, not just the bakery, but our relationship. It was fragile, like the delicate pastries we crafted each day, but it was a start. As I locked the door and turned off the lights, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in months. The bakery was more than just a business. It was a testament to our resilience, a symbol of our family's enduring legacy. And as long as we had each other, I knew we could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together. The bakery's front door chimed as the last customer of the day stepped out into the evening, leaving behind the warm, fragrant air filled with the scent of fresh pastries. I wiped down the counter, feeling the satisfying ache of a long day's work. Mark and I had found a rhythm, a delicate balance between our differing visions, but there was still an air of unresolved tension. As I was closing up, Mark approached, his face serious. We need to talk, Lisa. I turned to him, the knot in my stomach tightening. What is it? It's about David, he said, glancing around to make sure we were alone. I've been thinking a lot about what he said, about him being our half-brother. I nodded, my heart heavy. I know. I've been thinking about it too. But what can we do? He's gone. Maybe we can start by talking to Mom, Mark suggested, his voice tentative. We need to know the truth. That evening, we sat down with our mother, the woman who had always been our rock. Her face, lined with years of worry and love, looked even more weary as we broached the subject. Mom, we need to ask you something, Mark began, his voice gentle. It's about Dad and David. Our mother's eyes widened and she took a deep breath. I was afraid this day would come, she said softly. Your father, he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. David is your half-brother. The words hung in the air, a heavy, undeniable truth. Why didn't you tell us? I asked, my voice cracking. I wanted to protect you, she replied, tears in her eyes. And I wanted to protect your father's memory. He loved you both so much, but he made choices that hurt others, including David and his mother. Mark and I exchanged a look of shared understanding and pain. The pieces of our family's history were falling into place, and with it came a sense of clarity. The next day, we decided to confront David, who had been staying in a nearby town. It was time to face the past and find a way to move forward. The drive was tense, filled with unspoken fears and hopes. When we arrived at the small motel where David was staying, my heart pounded in my chest. Mark knocked on the door, and after a few moments, it opened. David stood there, looking surprised and wary. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice tinged with bitterness. "We want to talk," Mark said. "We know the truth, David, and we want to make things right." David hesitated, then stepped aside, letting us in. The room was sparse, a stark contrast to the warmth of our bakery. We sat down, the air thick with tension. "I'm sorry," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm sorry for everything you've been through. We didn't know." David's eyes softened, the anger giving way to a deep sadness. "It's not your fault. I wanted to be part of the family. I wanted what you had. You still can be," Mark said quietly. "We can start over, as a family." David looked at us, the vulnerability in his eyes a mirror of our own. "Do you really mean that?" "Yes," I said firmly. "We can't change the past, but we can build a future together, if you'll let us." David nodded slowly, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I'd like that." The days that followed were a whirlwind of rebuilding and reconciliation. David joined us at the bakery, bringing with him a fresh perspective and a newfound sense of belonging. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and tension, but we were committed to making it work. One evening, as the sun set behind the bakery, casting a warm golden light through the windows, we sat together, a family united by a shared past and a hopeful future. The bakery, once a symbol of our conflicts, had become a testament to our resilience and forgiveness. "We did it," Mark said, his voice filled with pride. "We really did it." I looked around at my family, Mark, David, and Sarah, each of us carrying our own scars but also a sense of strength and unity. "Yeah, we did," I said, my heart swelling with gratitude. The bakery thrived, blending tradition with innovation, a perfect reflection of our journey. And as we moved forward, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. The story of our family was one of betrayal and loss, but also of forgiveness and redemption. And as I locked the door that night, I felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that we had turned our legacy into something beautiful and enduring. Together, we had found our way back to each other, and that was the greatest victory of all. The bakery was buzzing with activity, the hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes creating a lively symphony. It had been months since David had joined us, and in that time, we had found a way to blend our visions into something truly special. The bakery had never been more successful, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like home again. I stood behind the counter, watching as customers filled the cozy space, their faces lit with smiles as they enjoyed our pastries and coffee. Mark was in the kitchen, experimenting with a new recipe, his creative energy a perfect complement to our traditional offerings. Sarah moved gracefully among the tables, her warm presence a constant source of comfort. David was at the register, his demeanor transformed from the bitter man we had first met to a valued member of our team. He greeted each customer with genuine warmth, his eyes reflecting a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. As the day wound down, I found a moment of quiet in the office, the sounds of the bustling bakery fading into the background. I sat at the desk, looking over the day's receipts and feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. We had come so far, and it hadn't been easy, but we had done it together. The door creaked open, and Mark walked in, a flour-dusted apron tied around his waist. "Hey, how's it going?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Good," I replied, smiling up at him. "Better than good, actually. The bakery's thriving, and so are we." Mark nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "I couldn't have done it without you, Lisa. Without all of us." We shared a moment of silence, the weight of our journey resting lightly between us. Then, Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with excitement. "You two have to come see this," she said, grabbing our hands and pulling us towards the front of the bakery. We stepped into the main room to find David standing in the center, holding a cake aloft. The customers had gathered around, their faces expectant. "I wanted to take a moment to thank everyone," David began, his voice strong and clear, "for welcoming me into this family and for helping me find my place here." He looked at us, his eyes filled with gratitude. "This cake is a new recipe, one that combines the best of what we've always done with something new. It's a symbol of our journey, of blending tradition with innovation, and of the family we've become." The crowd erupted in applause, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. We had done it. We had turned our fractured family into something whole, something beautiful. As the evening continued, the bakery filled with laughter and joy, a celebration of our hard-won unity. I moved through the room, talking to customers and friends, feeling a deep sense of connection and love. Later, as the last guests departed and the bakery quieted, we gathered around a table, exhausted but happy. David sat beside me, his expression thoughtful. "I never thought I'd find a place like this," he said softly. "A family like this." "You belong here, David," I replied, reaching out to squeeze his hand. "We all do." Mark raised his glass, a mischievous glint in his eye. "To family," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "To our future." "To family," we echoed, clinking our glasses together. As we cleaned up and prepared to close for the night, I felt a profound sense of peace. The bakery, once a place of conflict and uncertainty, had become a haven of love and resilience. We had faced our past, confronted our demons, and emerged stronger, together. Locking the door, I turned to my family, my heart full. "Let's go home," I said, and we stepped out into the night, ready to face whatever came next. Our story was one of redemption and hope, of finding strength in each other and building something lasting. And as we walked down the quiet street, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family. The bakery's warm glow faded behind us, a beacon of all we had overcome and all we had yet to achieve. Together, we had turned our legacy into something beautiful and enduring, and that was the greatest victory of all.